Very excited to welcome my guest today. He's a very busy man, and when I read his bio, it might sound like I'm talking about at least three people. He is the founder and chairman and CEO of the Mullings Group, a leading search firm in the medical device industry. He's the chief visionary officer of MRI, a top 3 executive search firm with 400 offices worldwide. And he's the founder of DragonFly Stories, a production company and studio that focuses on telling stories that revolve around medical technology, including 4 seasons of the international video docuseries True Future, of which Joe is the host. One more thing, his Twitter bio reads, "Be unreasonably relentless on a daily basis and powerfully patient for the long-term play." So welcome to Recruiting Trailblazers, Joe Mullings. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing well, Marcus, and thank you for the lovely intro. Sometimes I forget how much this team gets done.
I mean, do you ever actually go to sleep, Joe?
I do. I get 8 hours a day, believe it or not.
That's fantastic. I mean, you are a very busy man, and I think we need to dig into who you are, and there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, you're the chairman of the Mullings Group, which is a medtech recruiting company. Can you give us a quick overview of the business?
Sure. That business was started in January 1992. We've been at it almost 30 years now. I got into recruiting in 1989. In the early days, 92, 93, we decided we'd get into medtech. And the reason we got into medtech, that I knew we had an aging population. I knew technology would always seek a higher ground. I knew that we wanted to live not only longer, but better. And I knew that it was a constrained marketplace. And when I explain that to people, they say, why would you go after a constrained marketplace? Why wouldn't you go after one that had limitless opportunity? And you do that in housing markets, and you do that with a .com bubble burst. So I picked, the FDA regulates the medical device industry in the US, and there are other agencies around the world. So it grows at about 6 to 7% per year, but there are subcategories within that I knew would be leading edge technologies that would grow at the rate of 30 to 40% per year. And I would seek out those pockets that would be the tail that wagged the dog. So we did that, and we built that into more than 7,000 successful assignments over our 3 decades. And I'm proud to say that team has turned the way that talent acquisition is done on its head in the industry in general. So I'm super proud of that organization and how they continue to develop and set the pace for what talent access should look like.
Yeah. And when you say you've sort of turned it on its head, is that primarily because of all the content that you're creating and the way you're going about your sort of business development?
The content, I believe, is part of the product. When we choose to do content, the highlight are the videos and the curated quality of that this organization puts out. But I believe that you have to look at the use of the digital landscape as the messaging platform, and it could declare itself in video, certainly, and we've got the opportunity to do that. But headhunting was always done on a one-to-one basis. So it was always analog. One phone call, one point of influence, hang up the phone, do it again. One phone call, one point of influence, hang up the phone, do it again. And so you can get 20 or 30 conversations that way through. But what if you just for a moment thought about leveraging the platforms that are in front of us today, LinkedIn, obviously, Instagram, Facebook, and even at times Twitter, and you could have a single conversation with tens of thousands of people if you spend enough time building your distribution channel, which are your followers. Yeah. So when we made that move consciously about 5.5, 6 years ago, we said, while we want to put out podcasts and video and certainly copy as well, we knew we had to build on the side of that intention the distribution network, which has grown to more than 100,000 sets of eyes on a daily basis in our sort of area specialty. Brilliant.
And we're going to get into that because a lot of this conversation is going to be about the type of content and your strategy around building content. I did want to mention that you're also the chief visionary officer of MRI. Does that take up much of your time as well these days?
So a very dear friend of mine, Bert Miller, purchased MRI from a private equity firm about 2 years ago. And I was an early phone call that he made, and he said, look, you grew up in MRI, and I did. I spent the first probably decade plus of my career as a headhunter as an MRI franchisee. And I knew that was the powder keg, and I had the spark in regards to using digital strategies to overlay onto the classic, and I mean it in a positive way, provincial approach of talent access. So that takes up a solid part of my life. But if you examine all of the activities I have going on, they all revolve around empowering the individual to make career decisions in their life to give them more choices and more freedom as they move forward downrange.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's great stuff. You've made a very serious investment and built out an entire studio and team to produce the content that you share. You know, whilst many of us are still struggling to string together a few coherent sentences on LinkedIn on a regular basis, how did you get to the point where you felt that the substantial investment that you needed to make in the production studio was going to pay off? And do you even think in terms of ROI?
So ROI, as I've said a few times, only declares itself when you define the denominator of that, which is the timeline. And using a line that certainly I admire him, Simon Sinek didn't invent, but probably popularized, is, you know, I'm playing an infinite game. And so when you play an infinite game, that denominator suddenly becomes less important, and your intention along the way to prop up an entire industry and spread a new game book and a new strategy is really what our goal is. So our journey started around 5.5, 6 years ago, and it was on the shoulders of Google and Johnson & Johnson. We had been selected to build out one of the largest investments J&J made, to build out a surgical robot, and it was a JV between Google and J&J. And a good friend today, Scott Hunnekens, who was the CEO of that organization, said, we need 300 people in less than 24 months in Silicon Valley. Can you do it? And being a good salesperson, I said, sure, no problem. And I scratched my head on the plane ride home. And if you're a headhunter, you just have to do the math backwards and figure out how many people do you have to contact, how many interviews do you have to set up. And in Silicon Valley, getting people to either move there or switch jobs. So I was playing around in social, and I said, wait a minute, we're just going to do this on LinkedIn. And the convergence and the serendipitous moments is we were the first search firm with a video on LinkedIn, and we happened to be in an alpha group with them. And so I called up my nephew, and we got 2 Sony cameras together, and we started to shoot our first videos. And that maybe annualized investment of a few $1,000s turned into, and I've said it in the public domain, we spend more than $1 million a year on our production capabilities from 160 studios and with DragonFly Stories.
Right. And you have a full team there, a full-time production team that work at DragonFly Stories, right?
That's right. It's across the parking lot in a building we own from our search firm. We've got about 10,500 square feet in our search firm. And our production facility is about 5,000 square feet with full editing suites. There's probably 3 studios within the major studio, a green room, and we have guests coming in, medical device guests coming in, shooting their content here. And just like this, we can reach across the world and give curated video and a curated experience to that. And we use this studio as a means of communicating, and it helps with certainly True Future TV. It helps with TMG 360 Media, which is another media company we have. It helps with our search firm. But Marcus, probably more importantly, it has empowered our customers to raise $39 million in a B round. It's helped our customers drive in a faster fashion through clinical trials and saving themselves $50,000 to $100,000 a month in burn rate. It's helped our customers recruit force multipliers to help their organizations get to whatever their defined exit is. So when I look at the studio, while it certainly supports the TMG companies, it really supports the medtech, health tech ecosystem, which is, you know, we've become a little bit of a moving force within along the way.
And it helps them in as much as it allows you as a search firm to execute on their behalf and find the people that drives the growth that they're looking to achieve.
That's the end game, right? That's the end of the, you know, when I squeeze it, that's what comes out the end.
Yeah.
Obviously. But what it really does is it allows us to tell these amazing stories on LinkedIn. You know, LinkedIn is the go-to learning platform in the professional environment right now and for careers, but as well as just self-learning. If you really look at it and step back, it's not a social platform. It's not a job posting platform anymore. It's an educational platform. So we use LinkedIn to tell the stories of our clients. And dependent on how we take that substrate, that core base of that message, that storytelling, then what you can do is you can enhance that with whatever copy goes along with that. So as an example, we have this great client, Proximy, that is a massive seismic shift in telehealth. And Nadine Hashash Haram is a great client, both on the recruiting side, but also on the media side. She's a woman who just got on the scene just a few years ago and is in Worth magazine as one of the 50 most influential women in the world through storytelling on our platform on behalf of her technology. And so that helps with investors, it helps with clinical, it helps with potential partners. J&J, Medtronic, Edwards, Boston Scientific have in part discovered her because we also had them on LinkedIn Live, performing live surgeries and broadcasting that right out of the OR. Right. So this is where that media tool becomes a powerful asset to the entire industry, as well as for the talent access side of things.
Right. So you are in the search business, as you said, but really you're in the solving business problems business.
Yeah, aren't we all though?
Yeah. But a lot of search firms and a lot of recruiters are highly transactional and don't think of it that way. They're out there collecting recs and sending resumes, and they don't think about solving business problems. And quite often they don't even have that conversation about, you know, what business problem are we looking to solve by hiring this next sort of swathe of recruits. You're using the production studio to solve not just hiring problems, but overall business problems as well.
Yeah, and as you pointed out early when we were chatting before we went on air, I think headhunters who intelligently use media will replace headhunters who don't use media. I know media and technology will never replace the headhunter. I know that hands down, at least in the next 100 years. The use of narrow AI in the headhunting business is not going to replace the last mile that is so critical. It may load some of the funnel, but it's certainly not going to replace the headhunter. But I will tell you that I do believe that media appropriately used will be a powerful tool in the talent access world. And it may end up being used as a collaboration between the company that's looking to hire, or in these rapidly growing firms, they may co-source or partner with a search firm that, in addition to search services, offers the ability to communicate their message, mission, intention to the marketplace.
Yeah. Because basically what you're saying, and going back to your example earlier of the 3,000 requirements you had, it was, you just can't do this job one-to-one anymore. You can't just pick up the phone and call clients and then pick up the phone to individual candidates. You have to be in their minds already for them to want to talk to you and to establish the credibility and the trust through using media in order to be considered a potential partner or ally to either a candidate or a client, right?
That's correct. And it feels like it intimidates some headhunters, but let me share with you the ease of this. It really is the ease of this. There's only one conundrum in the jump from an analog subject matter expert on the telephone. So if you take most great recruiters, or even let's just say good recruiters, let's move to that category. Those good recruiters generally within their area of specialization are subject matter experts for the most part. If they're really committed to the craft, right? If they're not committed to the craft, I can't include that cohort in this. But let's just say for a moment, we think about the people who really do this and are proud of this and don't make up another title for themselves at a cocktail party. Like, they're headhunters, right? We put together teams. So if we take that headhunter, and she's committed to her craft. She's a subject matter expert in her craft because she has 30 to 50 conversations a day with other experts in the field, and she should be able to start to aggregate all that information and be able to become almost a shaman in that marketplace and start to reasonably predict what's going to happen in the workplace 24 to 36 months from now. So, but that happens usually and is constrained by maybe 500 to 600 different people that you talk to 80% of the time in your work month or your work quarter. Well, what if I took that same intelligence, that subject matter expertise, and I scaled it on a digital platform to tens of thousands of people a day? You would tremendously influence the market that you're already a subject matter expert in. So all you need to do is figure out, how do you cross that chasm? You take that same subject matter expertise and now digitize it just like you're doing, like you're doing right now, using media. And it could be copy. It doesn't have to be a podcast. It could be short form video. It could be long form video. It could be an interview show. But the point is you've got to take that subject matter expertise and have the courage. And that's one of my journeys here. I've been on quite a few recruiting platforms, happy to share how to with any recruiter. There's the opportunities out there, and how to do this. People overcook it in their mind on how difficult it is, or they default to think that they've got to get this curated, what we do back here. We're doing much more than just recruiting with this backdrop and this team here. So it's not a big jump. It's only a big jump if you make it that way.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people just get stuck at the idea stage about the type of content and where they should post it. And also people are they're chasing likes and they're chasing comments, and they're working back from an outcome, which is the wrong way to go about it, because you should be driving value into your network and stop worrying about how many people like it or comment on it. And then occasionally you'll strike gold and it will resonate, but there's no sort of surefire viral way of going about this. As Joel Mullings told me on the podcast many, many times, he said, look, it's about consistency. Stop worrying so much about the ideas and get your brand out there and let people know what you're capable of, what your values are, what your mission is, and start helping people. And that's clearly what you guys have been doing extremely well. But you're not just producing content. You're creating, scripting, producing, directing. I mean, you're making complete documentaries. You recently published the 4th season, I believe, of True Future, which is all shot in Israel. Can you tell us a little bit more about that show?
Yeah. So True Future, 3 years ago or so, maybe it's about 3 years ago, we were sitting around and I said, listen, this industry is amazing. You know, I fall in love with every day I come to work. And when I say this industry, I mean the medical device, health tech, med tech industry. I'm an engineer. I'm a geek from day one, from the get, when I was born. And I've always been fascinated with technology, and especially when it's able to help and heal and save lives. And so our practice is international. We probably, again, we do about 300 plus placements a year, and maybe a quarter of them are OUS. And there's so many great stories out there because we deal in the emerging tech startup. I said, we need to go on the road. We need to take this on the road, and we need to, and somebody said, like Bourdain. I'm like, exactly like Anthony, exactly. We need to, Bourdain was a show around food, but you never thought of it as food, right? He shared with you the journeys of these amazing people that usually were social challenges that he was addressing or uncovering along the way under the premise of food. And those conversations would take place over, you know, the local food. And so I've been, humbly compared to Bourdain over the years, of the Bourdain of the medtech industry. And that's what we did. We went mobile, and our first season was in Flagstaff by a good friend of mine, Dan Kasperzik. And there's always a funny story behind it, but Gore first said no, and then they said yes after some cajoling by Dan. And then we went to Germany, and then in the UK, and then over to Israel finally in season 4. And Israel in particular, because there's not a more passionate culture that is as warm as they are passionate and intense. So there are a lot of intense cultures out there. Having said that, though, there's not a culture, in my experience, in my 59 years, that is more committed to whatever they do, is more intense in whatever they do, and at the same time has some of the deepest compassion, all mixed up in the same barrel, that is a quandary to most until you understand the culture. And so we had to go over there and highlight some amazing entrepreneurs and inventors, and of course share the culture with the world.
It's an incredible project, and it's so far away from the day-to-day of headhunting and recruitment. That's the bit that amazes me about the stuff that you're doing, about the content you're creating, is that, and I've taken a look at that. I saw you rolling up into Flagstaff on your Harley Davidson, by the way. Very cool. I've taken a look at that show, and it's as good as anything I've seen, any documentary I've seen on TV. I mean, the production quality is incredible, and I'm sure that was a hell of an investment. And it just, I mean, I don't want to keep banging on about ROI, but it's amazing that you have sort of reconciled the desire to go and do this with your other businesses, and how it's going to profoundly impact them and ultimately drive, success and profit to the bottom line. But you've clearly made that association and you're committed to it, right?
Oh, I burned the boats. I had my Cortez moment years ago on just about everything I do. The decision to do that, True Future, if it was based on pure economics at the time, would have been vetoed out of the gate. I purposefully, this is something that's interesting, Marcus, I purposely have never balanced a checkbook in my life.
Wow. What happens around tax time?
That's what I get accountants paid for. But
yeah,
when you start to balance a checkbook, you start to pull your punches, and it depends on how you want to live.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard you make this point about worrying about ROI takes you further away from your goal.
But I'm not reckless, right? So I'm not reckless, and so I want to put that on the other end, is for the younger generation sitting out there, say, I heard Joe say he never balanced a checkbook. I'll say I'm not reckless. Some, though, have a very conservative definition of reckless. But I'd like to say that, and this is it's sort of a cool meme, I've never balanced a checkbook, and I've never allowed a checkbook to define my decisions on the long game.
Yeah. Good stuff. I mean, the other thing that occurs to me, I mean, I've been doing this podcast now for almost a year, and it's good fun, and you clearly enjoy what you do from a content creation standpoint. And you're obviously very good at it. I mean, you're very good at it. And do you sort of almost wish that was your full-time job? And I mean, what if someone from TV came along and said, hey, we want you to produce and star and host this documentary? Is that part of your mission as well, or is this all part of a greater purpose?
We've had those opportunities and we've passed on them.
Okay, that answers that question.
I enjoy this very much, but I don't enjoy the media for the sake of the media. I would have to be discussing and chatting about something I'm passionate about. I don't know if I could ever be a shill and have a TV show that would have, or anything that would have guests for the sake of the guest on it.
Right.
I'm a card-carrying introvert too. I will tell you that, and that's hard to believe, but those around me will tell you I'm a card-carrying introvert.
Yeah, that is very hard to believe, but I'll take your word for it. I mean, just dwelling on the Israel show, I mean, that must have been incredibly fulfilling to put that show together around a culture and a people that you're very passionate about. And we spoke earlier about that because I spent 6 months on a kibbutz in Israel when I was younger. And we know that they're a very purpose-driven culture. And as you said, a very compassionate culture. That must have been very satisfying from a creation standpoint, regardless of the overall goal of the show, right?
It was. I think my team spent 14 days there. I think I spent 10. And I've been to Israel a few times, fortunate enough to do so and spend some meaningful time there. But yeah, the mix of the culture, the mix of the technology, the openness, and if you get a chance to see it, please go online. The openness of the entrepreneurs, the investment community, just the people on the street. There's one scene in there, Marcus. There's one scene in there I think exemplifies a little bit of Israel for me. We were in Tel Aviv. We just finished a shoot inside of a bar or outside of a bar, and we're on the main street, and the team, and I think we had 14 or 17 people on the team, and we're walking down with the gear, and we're heading to just take a break, and I see these two incredibly handsome gentlemen walking down the street holding hands with a child in a stroller. And I knew that it would be a mind bend for people in the middle of to see two gay men in the middle of Tel Aviv, and I wanted a conversation with them, and demonstrably in love and as a partnership, right? As a marriage. I don't even know if they were married or not, but it doesn't matter for this conversation. So I sent my fixer, or actually my producer, chased them. And the fixer was Israeli, and he tapped them on the shoulder, and they were just out for an evening stroll, and explained to them what we were doing and why we were in town. And this was totally ad hoc. I saw them, and I was praying in my mind that they would say yes. And you saw their head go and look at me. And immediately the team scrambled to the middle of this square, this big traffic square, running through traffic with chairs, setting up lights. And these two beautiful men shared their story with us. And not enough of it made it on tape, but they explained how they found each other. And I think it was on, what was the tape? It was on Tinder. They were both in the military. One of them was married previously with a child. And it was just, and we talked about what it meant to be a gay couple in Tel Aviv and what it would mean to be a gay couple in Jerusalem. And that entire dynamic, that is so indicative of the culture to me. So it was a beautiful, I think that out of all the wonderful scenes we had there, that was my favorite.
Fantastic. And can we watch that on YouTube?
Yeah, I think, I will check with the team if that cut in particular is on YouTube, the full length. I know we have the full length video somewhere, but you can go to season 4. And I don't know, probably Control Room's listening. They can tell me which episode it was in.
Right. Well, you've teased us with it, so now you make sure, please make sure that we can find it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Switching gears just a tiny bit here. I want to get back to sort of the meaning behind all of this content. One of the first pieces of content of yours that I stumbled on was your 10-4-2 posting methodology, which was very, very interesting and something that we could all, if we all abide by, I think we're all going to get a lot better at this game of content creation. Can you just run us through that methodology for a sec?
Love to. So it's on 10-4-2 Mullings, and you can find it on YouTube. But it's a lockdown, 100% guaranteed way to get in the inner circle of anybody who's at least mildly active on LinkedIn. And so if you think about LinkedIn, and we all have behaviors on LinkedIn, the behaviors are, to your mention earlier, we post something and suddenly there are a couple likes on there. And what do? We go to those likes and we say, who liked it? Who liked it? Almost obsessively by the hour when you put something new up as a post. And then when somebody shares something, then it's a home run. You're like, oh my gosh, this just went viral, even though it was one share. So I designed this strategy because it just made sense, and it's ended up helping many, many people. Pick 20 targets on LinkedIn, whether they're hiring managers. You don't even have to be in the headhunting business. Just somebody you want to get in their inner circle with that. There's no way you could have, even if you parked in their parking lot or called their phone. And in the ratio of 10 likes, 4 comments, and 2 shares, you want to get your person that you want to get in the inner circle of. You want to start an Excel spreadsheet, and you basically want to watch what they post. So if you're a basic user of LinkedIn, you can go to somebody's profile, go to their activity, hit their posts, and you can see what they posted.
And you can follow them.
And you can follow them, of course, as well. But when you follow them in your feed, they don't always show up, right? So what you want to do is you want to periodically, every Saturday morning with your tea, just go see what they have posted themselves. Or if you just go to their activity, you could also see what they have either liked or commented on. And you just want to show up in front of them by liking what they post and or commenting what they post. Or if it's something that's sort of cool and relevant, share it, which is like the home run. And so the 10-4-2 allows them to start to say, who's this Marcus guy that's liked the last couple things? And he put a comment in there. Oh, and it was a clever comment and very salient to my post. I'm going to watch him, right? Because what do? New person. We go to their LinkedIn page and we see their bio and who are they? And are they somebody that I want to align with? And so if you do that and you create your list of just say, let's say 20, and you give yourself 30 days to work through that 10-4-2 cycle and then start it again. And please stay away from immediately soliciting them after you get through the first 10-4-2 cycle. It's quite okay to make friends on LinkedIn and not ask for something. But the idea there is you end up in their ecosystem, in their inner circle, where they're living their life out loud digitally on the professional platform. So that's the short version of 1042. And it has, I should have trademarked, patented it. It has become an incredibly powerful tool for so many people.
That's amazing. I'm going to start using it myself. But I say that after every week when someone educates me, it's so easy to sort of say you're going to do this stuff, but it's all about consistency, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's about execution. This life is not super complicated, and it's not. It's just, will you wake up and do? Because we aren't what we say, we are what we do. So will you wake up every day and just do a little bit towards that, about getting better, or even how about this? Just don't get worse.
Yeah,
just don't get
something else that you've mentioned a couple of times, which I like, is your hum, sing, shout kind of theory. What does it mean?
So it's built around marketing online, and people overcook or overload themselves with, what do I do online? How do I develop my reputation or brand or reach? Because those are three interchangeable words to me: brand, reach, and reputation.
Yeah.
And you've got to look at it on a steady basis. And the hum, sing, shout is, the hum is a constantly on. It's a low frequency hum, and it looks like this if you want to look at a sinusoidal wave. It's just that little postings every day. They could be anything from informational, educational, inspirational, whatever they are, but you're on every day. You're showing up at the gym every day. Even if you're doing a half-baked workout, you're showing up because it's better than not being there. And then the sing is, you increase your cadence and your amplitude a little bit more, and maybe the sing is once every 4 days. And it's a bit of information that might be of a little bit more value to the market and a little bit more exposure about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then your shout, and your shout should occur maybe 7 to 10 times per year. And that's a meaningful event that you want to share with the marketplace. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about yourself. It could be about something, order of magnitude that's happened in the marketplace, because your hum, sing, shout strategy should not be about advertising. Your hum, sing, shout strategy should be about educating, informing, and inspiring. And so we just posted, I think I posted the hum, sing, shout on my feed last week on a pretty cool graphic that seemed to clarify that strategy. So if you just go to my LinkedIn profile, and I think it was maybe the second week, I know this may not appear right away, but in the second week of April, you'll see the hum, sing, shout graphic. And in fact, it's been requested a few times. I'm probably going to do a YouTube piece on it.
Right. And so really translating that sounds to me like give, take, or give, ask. Most of the time you need to be driving value into your network, but then occasionally you earn the right to be able to shout, or maybe even, make a request or ask your network to do something for you. Is that kind of, am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I try and end up every single one of the presentations that I give, it's a couple times a week now, with give without the expectation of anything in return, but don't cheat yourself. Be standing in plain sight when somebody needs something. And living by that mantra is an incredibly empowering, and leaves yourself open for wonderful relationships.
Yeah. Interesting. I know we've both spoken probably quite recently with James Hornick of Hirewell, and when we spoke, he was stressing the importance of staying on brand and true to your mission when creating content. Whereas some people, they just seem to post whatever gets them likes and comments. How important is it for you to stay on brand whilst keeping the content interesting and entertaining?
It's a great question, because it's easy to chase vanity metrics, and we've all heard that term before. It's super easy to chase that. But then you never know really who you are, and your audience never knows really who you are.
Right.
The guidance I give to people early in, when I coach them on creating reputation, brand reputation, those are the same thing, is you need to be whoever you're going to be when I shake you at 2 o'clock in the morning and get you out of bed. And if I were to stick a camera in front of your face, or a microphone, or a pen in your hand, you better be that person, because otherwise it's going to be very challenging for you to sustain meaningful content over the long run. And eventually there's this dissonance that comes inside of us, inside of our body and inside of our brain, that you will have a hard time putting out value on your creative. And so it's already challenging for all of us to put something out 7 days a week of value to people. And so if it's not you, it'll be nearly impossible for you to create content that will mean something to an audience. You know, we've been going on it now for about 5 years, and it's rare that I miss a day in creating my content. And I have to be thinking about it 24/7. And I do, but it's when I go through the day and there are moments in that day that usually, and I'll create a Post-it, and I'll put the Post-it in my book, and then over the weekend, I'll go through the 15 Post-its that week that I thought were interesting or presented an opportunity to share a thought or a learning moment with the audience. And that is one of the most robust ways to create content, because people are always struggling. Keep Post-its around you, keep a book with you, put the thought on the Post-it. If it can't fit on a Post-it, it can't fit on LinkedIn.
Oh, that's a good one. Is it possible, do you think, to overshare? Because I think sometimes people think, surely my network doesn't want to hear from me every single day. And that sort of prevents them from even engaging once or twice a week. Do you think it's possible to overshare?
It depends what you're sharing. You know, one of the things that we try and make sure that we do is at least keep some sort of balance. There's not a ton of science around what we do. I think what we try and do is we try, out of the 7 days a week that we put things out, probably when I first started, Marcus, it was about 80% industry content around tech. And then over the last 5+ years, it's probably indexed more towards 80% on how to think, how to personally develop yourself, not from a lifestyle coach, but how you deserve to be held responsible for how you're going to either leave this life with this noble opportunity that you've been given, meaning a life, or are you just going to sort of half-ass it through life and at the end be sitting around in a rocking chair with a ton of regret of what you didn't do and you blew the chance to do? And then what example did you leave behind on the people who were watching you, meaning your children? And so I think there's an enormous amount of responsibility to carry through these 80 years of our life. And that's where our content is indexed towards, without it being, rainbows and unicorns, sort of a throat punch, tough love about an accountability that we all should have as we carry on through this life.
Yeah. And it's funny because it feels like we're at a kind of a flex point right now, sort of coming out of COVID when it comes to content creation, because it used to be that content and creating content was just a good idea. But we've kind of crossed the bridge now, haven't we? It's like, if you're not creating content, you're going to be obsolete, basically, in the next few years. Would you agree with that?
I would. It's interesting, and I'm gonna challenge my team to pull out a Adam Posner podcast, The Pos, when he was in studio here for our team, and it was in the old studio. And I said to him, I said, brands come out of crisis moments better than non-branded. And I think COVID occurred 8 months after that. And we came out of, well, we're not out of it. We're on what appears to be the back end of this amazing sort of test to the human race. And I will tell you that I have watched our brand, our clients' brands, who paid mind to it going into COVID or doubled down in COVID, coming out of this with an unfair advantage against those who did not.
Yeah, that's excellent. And, I think I'm committed to it, and I'm doing the podcast to prove it, and thinking every day now of ways that I can continue to communicate and drive value into my network. So one of the other things I've heard you say are words to the effect that producing great content is all about moving the phone further down the activity chain. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I made the mistake when I came into the MRI network as the chief vision officer of misrepresenting how digital should be used. And I've been at recruiting now since December 4th, 1989. And I made the mistake of saying digital is going to replace recruiting. And I didn't mean technology. I just meant that you needed to digitally reach out, as we explained earlier in the piece. You had to create a better delivery system than just the telephone. And it was appropriately misinterpreted because I didn't convey my message well. And the phone is still the linchpin in recruiting. It will always be. But what you do, so in headhunting, the phone used to be at the front of the line. And then all the conversations would happen after that, and then the decision would be made down here, take the deal or not take the deal. Now, what's happened is the phone's moved further down the line, and here is where you get a chance to let the entire world that you recruited know who you are, what you stand for, and how smart you are relative to the market that they're in. So when you bring a JO to them and they pick up the phone, they're like, Marcus, man, I listen to you all the time. You really know our industry. I do not have to spend the first 32 seconds explaining who I am in that phone call anymore. The gravitas and awareness that is around my brand and my expertise and my love for the industry allows me to influence that person to make a accelerated decision, not getting them to say yes, an accelerated decision because they know me, they trust me, and they know I know the industry that they have bet their careers in. And so I've just moved the phone down range, or you can argue to say that I've introduced the power of digital and branding before the phone now, so it's semantics. But in the beginning, when I started bringing this sermon to the industry, they thought that I meant the phone was going away, and it wasn't.
Right.
It was just moving down range, but it will always be the pivot point of our industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically what you're talking about here is kind of the end of cold calling, because when the phone was at the beginning of the chain, which is how I grew up and probably how you grew up in recruiting as well, it was the very first thing that we would do. We would pick up the phone to a prospect client or a prospect candidate and pitch them on our value proposition and start the relationship from there. And look, some people still do that today, and it's not completely game over. But what you're talking about, and I love the visual of it, is if your goal is to move the phone further away down the chain of the things that you do to get in front of your prospect candidates, clients, individuals, then that's a really great goal to have, isn't it? Because by the time you actually do get on the phone and speak with them, they know who you are, and it's no longer a cold call. It's a warm call. It's a welcome call, right?
That's exactly right. And you can only make 70 phone calls a day if you're doing this business. And previous to this capability, we used to have 100, but in 4 hours of connect time. But I started out in this business mailing resumes. I didn't even have a fax machine. That tells you how old I am in this business. So yeah, what it does is it takes that distribution curve and moves it further to the right to A calls. In the old days, if you looked at a classic distribution curve and you took 100 calls, let's say, maybe 15 of them, 20 of them were A calls. If as long as you weren't calling your buddies and, sort of pulling your own leg, right? Let's call people that never talked to us before, right? So let's look at that. If we took 100 calls of people who never spoke to us before, the distribution would probably 15 of those maybe would be A calls. Maybe 30 to 40 would be B calls, but a lion's share would be C calls of people who never heard of me before. And I had to spend that first 50% of the phone call explaining who I am, why I was an expert in their market, and why they should trust me in bringing the opportunity to them on behalf of the client I'm working for. With the use of media appropriately deployed, you can eliminate probably 80 to 90% of those C calls and shift everything to B to A by calling the same 100 people that don't know you based upon telephone calls exclusively. And that's what marketing well done. And again, that marketing well done is basically only establishing your subject matter expertise, and this is where it wraps back around, your subject matter expertise that you used to only be able to deploy on the telephone. You're now deploying it out loud, at scale to the tens of thousands of people in your industry.
Right. I mean, it's almost a waste of time these days, just cold calling somebody who's never heard of you. So the goal therefore should be, you know, let's get after, to your earlier point, an audience of prospects and warm them up with content and media and recognition and start to build trust. And then when I do actually get on the phone with them, you know, job done. I'm 80% of the way there because I've already, nobody wants to be sold to anymore. Okay. You've got to be in their mind. You've got to be, you have some awareness. They have to have some awareness of you for you to be able to have those transactional conversations, right?
Correct. And take it one step further, because we're watching this dynamic happen in our firm now for all those search firm owners who have teammates, or you don't even have to have teammates, just yourself. We talk about the telephone. Think about, and you need to unwind your search moves based on what you're doing outside of search as a consumer yourself. When was the last time you picked up a phone call that you didn't know who was on the other line? It's very rare.
Very rarely.
And then if your mom calls you, you prefer that she texted you first to ask, Marcus, do you have a few minutes, before her just bumping into your day. And so what we have watched in our search firm is, as my search consultants build their gravitas and their subject matter leadership online, now they use their email and LinkedIn to reach out and just share the opportunity with the clients, the individuals. The individuals now call in, and we're making schedules now. Their days are scheduled now every 30 minutes with calls that instantly are all A calls. So now it's an inbound call by individuals who are responding to the opening that we have based upon they want to talk to my headhunter because of his or her expertise in the market, even if they're not interested in that search as it is. It's quite amazing.
That is amazing, and another great use of media and content. One of the other things you sort of said related to this is it's how the salesperson appears in front of their customer that counts these days. Mm-hmm. And you went on to say that if she's not able to appear frictionless and seamlessly without interruption to her customer's life, she's not going to be successful.
Yes.
Does that?
Yes. And or she's going to be a lot less successful. We have become such prima donnas on not wanting to be inconvenienced.
Right.
Due to technology, due to just living in a very, very amazing time in the 21st and the 20th century. We've never had such an easier life, this current generation, on the ability to call a stranger up and pick you up on a corner on a product called Uber, on the ability to order toilet paper at 9 o'clock in the morning and have it show up for the afternoon to be used, right? We have never been in a more, now with COVID, we have our groceries delivered to our front door where we don't even have to go outside. And so if you're not thinking about your search business or any business with the same sort of reduction in friction for that interaction, when if you put it in context, you're asking somebody to leave their job, give up their paycheck, potentially move their house, pull their children out of school if they have children, and start a new pattern in their life. And if you underclub that or disrespect how influential that is on people's lives, you're always going to be less successful. And that first point of connection needs to be as frictionless as possible, or even better, how can you insinuate yourself into people's lives in your area of expertise of headhunting that you're there every day anyway. So when you do reach out, you're not a stranger. Right.
I guess the gold standard is having them reach out to you and just say, look, I love the content you've created. You know, you're always on my feed. I'd love to talk to you next time I'm looking to make a move.
That's right.
What amazes me is that it doesn't seem very long ago that owners of agencies were still running the phone metric. How many phone calls can you make in a day? Which to me seems like has to be the most pointless metric out there these days, don't you think?
I love metrics when appropriately applied. I'm not suggesting this, and I grew up in that time. In my earlier days owning a search firm, we ran phone times, and it had to be 4 hours connect time.
Yeah.
And we had to have 100 calls a day. and we had to have our planner out. And there's a lot to be said about metrics appropriately used. The only metrics that we have in our office right now on six big flat screens are how many followers we have on LinkedIn, what the distribution is of those geographically, what the distribution of those are from a functional perspective, what the cash in is for the month on the fees, our platform of Pulse, TMG Pulse, and in the lunchroom there's a TMG Pulse. And so we do not use any other metrics other than that, because I believe those are the leading indicators of us doing our job on behalf of our clients and on behalf of the individuals we're trying to serve in the marketplace.
Yeah. I mean, you're very much the figurehead of the Mullings Group, certainly online and in the research I've done. Has your team adopted this approach and that you've taught them? And are they all sort of rolling out this content successfully as well on the back of the work that you've done? So
Holly Scott, we've been together for about 24, 25 years. Holly has. Matt Kaufman, who's been with me for 19 years, has. They both have their own podcast show, and they're doing a tremendous service to the industry and featuring in their own style guests that reflect who they are. And it's very, very cool. Matt has a very special sort of demo, that psychographic that he deals with, and so does Holly. All of our recruiters are very active online, and it goes to prove that you don't have to do video. Giovanni Lauricella has an amazing following online, and he indexes towards the investment community and the startup community, and he shares so much content and has developed lists that are the top venture capital firms and the contacts of those people in our industry. And he has people by the thousands requesting it from him. And so, and even my just straight up recruiters are very active online. So we know it's part of the commitment to moving the ball forward on behalf of the individuals, so we can show them the best opportunities in the world, because then the clients see we're so committed to the industry that they're excited for us to work with them and then show their story online as well. So it really works out well for the whole industry.
Fantastic. There's so much more that we could potentially talk about here, but we've run out of time, Joe. I do want to recommend that everybody jump online and check you out on your YouTube channels, your multiple websites. There's so many other videos I've watched. I wanted to touch today on the Mastering the Boring video that you did, which was brilliant, and Nobody is Coming to Save You. These are both great videos that you can view online of Joe sharing some profound thoughts. I'm very grateful to you for coming on Recruiting Trailblazers today. Joe, what are you excited about? Just briefly wrapping up here, what are you most excited about for the rest of 2021?
I'm excited to see, as we come out of this transition on this amazingly challenging 14 months we've been through to date, I'm always fascinated by the agility and the sort of creativity that we as a species have in solving these problems, where it's almost more interesting now that I don't know what I'm going to do if I don't have to put a mask on my face walking around. It feels weird. So the rest of 2021, I'm going to be watching human behavior on how this threshold gets crossed into whatever it looks like on the other side, because that will inform us on how we should structure our businesses.
Right. Okay. Brilliant words of wisdom there from Joe Mullings. Again, I'm very grateful for you, Joe, to come on to Recruiting Trailblazers, and so happy that we've now made friends and we'll stay in touch. And I look forward to viewing and listening to all of your content moving forward, and we'll speak again very soon. So thanks for coming.
I really appreciate the opportunity and the incredible, thoughtful questions that you have. I was very happy to do this.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Take care.